We're very happy to have you here. We are continuing with the series of talks and open events to the community during this Campus Expert Summit. And during this whole period, a very hot topic was mobile and the experience of users on mobile. And we're very happy to have with us a very, very known and popular expert from Google. So Ryan Warrender is a mobile lead, UX lead at Google. And he will be speaking with you for the next hour what makes the user experience great when we're talking about mobile. And it's a pleasure to invite Ryan here, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't give him the word before anything else, taking a picture with him. Because basically, when he arrived, he said, okay, I don't want to sound cocky, but I have more followers on Instagram than all of you together. Yeah, that's what he said.
That surely did not happen.
That's what he said. And I felt kind of embarrassed about myself, so I said, I'm going to take advantage of him. So I want to take a picture. Let me see if I can get some more followers. Okay, so you join in. Okay. Oops. Okay. Woo! Ew! And in exchange, I'll give him a Brazilian hug. Okay. Okay, guys, please take the most out of Ryan.
Thanks, guys.
Go for it.
Ew! Before I actually jump into my presentation, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to the São Paulo campus staff. It has been the most seamless and incredible summit I've ever been a part of. So let's give them a round of applause and all the experts in the room as well. Amazing. Cool. Let's get these. 1 second. Awesome. Just to get a pulse of the room, just raise your hand if this is your role in your company. Raise your hand if you're a developer. Okay. Raise your hand if you would classify yourself as a designer. Awesome. What about if you're the founder? Cool. What about if you're in charge of like marketing? It's pretty much the same person raised their hand 4 times. Yeah, awesome. I get it. We wear a lot of hats. Cool. So I'm going to kind of carve through this. At any point you guys are bored, just give me like a thumbs down and I'll speed it up and make sure the content is very relevant for you guys because I want to make sure that you get the most out of this. But my presentation's called, Winning on the Mobile Web and why the biggest opportunities are in the smallest moments. And that's really what my team does, is we find all the little things that can ultimately make a huge impact on your business. But before I actually get started on the content piece, I want to give you my thoughts on Brazil so far. So this is my first time in Brazil. So far, it is an absolutely incredible country. So the first thing I learned when I landed on a red eye is your coffee is no joke. I get why you guys have big cups and little cups. I filled up my big cup, and then 6 hours later, I laid in my bed and saying, I guess I'll just wait here now till tomorrow. The second is the São Paulo startup scene. Just so much energy. The people I've worked with here, they could light up a room. So this is just, I acknowledge you guys for taking the time. I think this speaks volumes about how much you care. And then the last, which is kind of an obvious one, but Brazil has to be the highest hugs per capita in the world. I have never gotten so many hugs. I think Faye might have has hugged every single person in São Paulo at one point. Awesome. So I just wanted to really kind of just say, I fell in love with your country. I think it's an incredible country. And the other thing I'm really excited about is I think there's a ton of opportunity, and I can't wait to see one of your startups, be the next unicorn or have a really clear exit strategy. So let's get into it. Do you mind if we hit the timer as well? I'm a little bit of a talker. I am from New York, so I'll try to keep it not too fast, but fast. Awesome. So a lot of people have been calling me the UX guy this week, which is cool. I get it. I'm a mobile UX manager. I'm based in New York. I work primarily with small to medium-sized businesses. A lot of them happen to be startups. I did put my handle there. I'm a firm believer in the community and interacting with the community. So if you guys want to have a conversation or you're interested, please reach out. I'm always posting some tips and resources as well. Cool. So what do I actually do? I think there's a popular show on HBO called Silicon Valley. Has anybody in the room seen it or familiar with it? They got some fans. So designers kind of get a bad rap sometimes, but I think this is kind of funny of what do designers actually do? So let's watch this clip real quick.
My name is Dane. Oh, I'm sorry. What can I do for you? I'm heading the design team that's building the enclosure for the box. It's time for the concept meeting. Concept meeting. Okay. I'm just going to show you a few pictures, and you tell me which ones you like, okay? Okay, sure. Wait, hold on. I thought you were going to show me pictures of boxes, like data storage devices. Before I can actualize a box, you and I need to develop a shared aesthetic vocabulary. Otherwise, I have no idea what we're going to want. I have a lot of work to do right now. This is work. This is my work.
Yeah, so I do a little bit more than that. So what do I actually do? This is the view from my office, 14th floor in Manhattan, facing the Freedom Tower. I love New York. I think São Paulo and New York have a lot of similarities in terms of the energy, I think, in the vibrance. What do I actually do for the other 40 hours a week is sitting down next to developers and designers and hearing their problems and having them walk me through what their users are experiencing. And the thing that I do there versus now is I just listen. I listen and I watch. And some of the best qualities I can instill the designers in the room is watch your users and have them talk to you about the experience. The other thing I do, which is, again, I'm a huge advocate of community. I think community is what drives the open web, and I'm a huge advocate of the open web, is hackathons. So hackathons are one-day events that kind of focus on three things. It's a contest, community, and collaboration. So we get a bunch of developers, designers in a room together, and we try to solve a common problem. So we're trying to do more of these, but I think a lot of really good progress and tips have come out of that have helped me populate and share some of my best feedback in this presentation. So that's a little bit about what I do, but this is my presentation today. If we were living during the Titanic, this is probably what it would have looked like. Everyone on their Insta story and Snapchat just getting the boat as it goes down. So I broke this presentation into 4 major pieces that I've heard from everyone during the week of interest. So I've heard multiple startups kind of mention a few of these. The first and the most important is the priority. Why should you guys invest in mobile? Yes, I'm going to be talking about mobile, but a lot of my UX that I talk about is also going to translate to desktop and also translate to native. So it's a mobile web presentation. A lot of the design pieces are going to be baked in throughout. Speed, the importance of speed, how speed plays a factor in Brazil. We already kind of hit on the design piece, creating a frictionless user experience so the user can get from what they're looking for as fast and get to what they're looking for as fast as possible. And then lastly, the future. What's next? How can you guys use your tech to be ahead of your competitors? So I'll talk a little bit about AMP and progressive web apps towards the end. So this is a reoccurring theme that everyone has more or less been talking about this week. This is something that I feel very passionate about, is focus on the user and all else will follow. You guys have probably heard multiple experts say this, but this is really, really, really important. That if you guys are just designing a product but you're not constantly getting feedback, I highly encourage you guys to pump the brakes and pulse your users. The more you can kind of have a pulse of what they're looking for, the more successful you're gonna be. So let's start out with the priority. Why does the mobile web even matter? But first, we need some data. Everyone loves data. Google loves data. You guys love data. So there's going to be a lot of interaction from the crowd here. So we check our phones how many times per day? What's someone's guess? We had some good answers, a wide range. We have some super users in the room. I heard a very high number, and I also heard a very low number. So the number when we ran a recent study, 150 times per day we're touching our phones. We're reaching into our pockets before we're picking up, our laptops. I think this is more, relevant than ever. In fact, nomophobia, which is actually the fear of being without a mobile device, has seen a rise in the recent years. So I think the reason I wanted to show you guys and kind of set the tone is that mobile has become an integral part of our life and an integral part of business. And no, that is not a picture of me. So let's get some data. Let's get the numbers, right? Mobile by the numbers. So first off, that's just a baby. I don't know how that got in here. There's 4.3 births per second. Pretty impressive. That's a lot of births. But let's compare that to how many smartphones are actually purchased. So there's 45 smartphones purchased per second. So there's definitely a chance that phones take over the world. Let's do another one. How long does it take the average person to report a lost wallet? Guesses. 26 hours. This is a mobile presentation. You guys know what's coming. How long does it take for a smartphone? 68 minutes. 68 minutes. And this just shows how important mobile is and how important our phones are to our lives. Cool. One more fun one. What percentage of people would rather go without a toothbrush for a week than their mobile device? Yeah, let's let that soak in for a second. Let's actually pulse this room. Are you guys ready? All right, who raise your hand if you would rather have your phone than a toothbrush? Don't be shy. I'm up there. They have mouthwash. All right, so that was like 10%. But the answer, that's a toothbrush. The answer is 46%. Would rather have their mobile phone than a toothbrush. So why am I telling you this? We don't go online, we live online. So these are just some fun ways to kind of show you how important mobile is, but I want to get a little bit more real with you and give you some actual concrete data for why you should be investing resources in mobile. So all industries, mobile is leading the way. This shouldn't be any surprise to you. Between 2014 and 2015, mobile queries surpassed desktop. And what that means is our users' expectations are changing. We no longer have more screen real estate, and we have to force it to a smaller device. So we need to be more creative and more selective of what we're actually giving the users. So you guys are probably saying, yeah, but like, what about conversions? What about the actual business part of this? And you're right. Tablets and desktops still have, conversions around 2 or 3%. And we look at mobile, it's still under 1%. And my goal when I work with companies is to make sure that we bring that mobile conversion rate up as high as possible. And the thing is if more users are coming onto the mobile web, that number becomes more and more important. So a lot of the feedback I'm going to be talking about today is going to focus on 2 major metrics. One of them is increasing your conversions. More people getting the product or service that you're providing. And the other one is bounce rate, making sure that users aren't leaving your site. You don't want to shut the door to potential lifetime customers. And I'll show you guys how to avoid that. But let's talk about Brazil and talk about how mobile is important in Brazil. So Hootsuite and We Are Social has some really good metrics this year. So these are relevant of 2017. The one that you guys want to keep an eye on is mobile subscriptions. So the total population of Brazil is right around 210 million. But what's even more fascinating is that the mobile subscriptions is 239 million, which is 114%. You guys like your SIM cards. So there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that. The other thing that's important to note is your internet users, 66%, but it's also one of the fastest growing markets for internet users. Let's talk about device usage, the percentage of adult populations using different devices. One of them is your mobile phone. 89%, smartphones 62%, laptops, and then you guys have the super techies with the wearable at 1%. So the reason that this is really important is that smartphone number continues to creep up, and that's the first point of contact that a person in Brazil is probably going to interact with your brand first. So internet use, I'll go real quickly through this one. Mobile internet users, 63% of the total population. But the thing that's really interesting here is this number. Desktop usage in Brazil has dropped 6% year over year, where mobile phone usage has gone up almost 20%, 19%. So the demand to be fast, be relevant, and be clean on mobile has never been more important in Brazil than right now. But let's talk about, growth in internet users, right? Brazil, always on the up and up. Sixth in internet, user growth year over year. That's a lot. That's a lot of growth. And this is where there is a massive amount of opportunity coming up. So we have a country that's 6th in new internet users, and now we have the average mobile connection speed. And where is Brazil at on this? I'll try to make it a little easier. Brazil's there. And the Olympics, the World Cup, definitely helped bring up the average bandwidth in Brazil. But it's still lagging behind, and as a result, performance and speed are going to be one of the most important ways for your business to win on the mobile web. So perfect segue into speed. So let's play a game. I love games. You guys like games? Please put your hand in the air like you just don't care when you would leave this mobile site. So pretend you have a phone, and this is the experience. I'll tell you when the timer technically actually counts. So it doesn't count, but the user's typing in a URL right now. We're putting ourselves in the user's shoes. So it starts now. We have some patient Brazilians. Yeah, we're still waiting, guys. You have to send CNN an email. Yeah. All right, we have a majority of the people with their hands up. For those of you that didn't put your hands up, congrats on you having the most patient people in the world. You're also probably thinking, like, Ryan needs to find some better games to play, but that's besides the point. So the purpose of that exercise is that speed thrills and friction kills. And I love this slide. I recommend you guys use these metrics as well. They're very relevant. 53% of users will abandon a site if it takes longer than 3 seconds to load. 3 seconds. That experience was probably 10x that. I think that site loaded closer to 30 seconds. So you're basically, by the time that page fully renders, there's going to be almost no users left. And this was taken on a 3G network. And the reason I think 3G is important in Brazil is that's going to be the most common connection point for most Brazilian internet users. The second one that I wanted to talk on is the far right. 1 in 5 users will never return to a site if they're dissatisfied. Think about that for a second. Do you want to shut the door to 20% of your users? All right, so I know we're getting really into the data, and all the designers are like, I want to see more images, I want to see mocks. Why is he showing me graphs? I'm a designer. But the purpose of all these graphs and data is I'm a firm believer that you should use data to justify design. So this is really important, and this is probably my favorite metric to share across all the different people that raised their hand in the beginning and all the different types of roles that you guys play in your startups. And the takeaway here is this is a SOSTA study. It's a web analytics company. They do a ton of amazing studies. But what you can see is basically the faster the page loads, the higher likely of a conversion. And then if we look at inversely, the lower the bounce rate. And what I was finding as I was looking at a lot of startups over the past 2 weeks, and most startups that I work with on a 3G network, the load time is closer to 9 seconds. So we are not optimized on mobile. We are losing users, and we are not getting conversions that we want to drive a young business that needs to be hungry for new users. Last example, let's take a bigger business, e-commerce company. They spend $124 on average. There's 142 unique users, and the conversion rate's right around 1.5%. So at 5 seconds, they're making $3.4 million annually. At 3 seconds, they're making $7.5 million annually. And this is all based on every second counts on conversions. Last thing on the speed front is, page speed is a ranking signal in our search results. There's a lot of ranking signals, obviously, but you can see on the slide here, a lot of companies have been prioritizing speed. The one I really like is Amazon. They're not even focused on seconds. They're focused on milliseconds. They shaved off 100 milliseconds, which led to 1% increase in their total revenue. So how to summarize this? Page speed is money. Money where startups need to be scrappy with their capital. Here's a place where you can save it. For the developers in the room, these next few slides are for you. For everyone else, I'll try to move through them fairly quickly, but for the developers that came, I really want to make sure I hit a few points. So developers are always asking me, what are the metrics that you actually care about? So when you're in the Chrome Dev Tool or using webpagetest.org, these are the three that I like. Speed index, which is the average time to everything above the fold is visually rendered. Total requests, so how efficient is it going from the client and server and back? 80 requests is usually what we recommend, and page weight less than 1 megabyte. The number one thing I see for startups is very, very heavy images. Because you guys go check your websites after this, go to the Chrome Dev Tool, filter by image size, and tell me that you guys don't have images over 100 kilobytes. And I bet you that number is probably closer to 3.5 megabytes. And for all the companies in here that have a mobile site and they have a moving video in the background, you guys are probably triple or 4 times that. So I'll kind of translate this for the non-technical folks in the room to make it so we're all on the same page. Think of your website like you're moving. You kind of want to do 3 major things. The first is you want to make sure you're unpacking the most essential items first. So that's basically the first impression. You want everything above the fold to load as fast as possible. The second is least amount of trips as possible. So you want to be efficient. You don't want to have a million calls back and forth to all those third-party sites that you guys are using. And the third is the boxes are light. You want to make sure it's easy to load the images as fast as possible. Everything is compressed. Your JavaScript is minified, it's concatenated, and it's running as efficiently as possible. Awesome. I'll pause for a second. The good news is that a lot of what I'm talking about right now on performance, a lot of these fixes I've seen developers fix in 24 to 48 hours. These are not 6-month projects. And that's why I'm spending so much time on performance, because it's free money. It's an opportunity for you guys to be faster than your competitors and have that first touch point be an incredible experience where they're going to keep coming back to your product, to your service, to your app. I'm going to skip this because this is small, but I will share this. Again, just high-level summary here. Images, number one thing I see, too much JavaScript. Custom JavaScript is huge. Custom fonts I see a lot. Basically, you don't want any render blocking JavaScript. That's going to really drag down your site performance. I'll show you guys all the links at the end. That's probably the best slide to take a picture of. So the biggest thing to end performance piece is performance is design's best friend, not enemy. Performance, speed is a feature. Designers love speed, and it actually enhances how good your experience is. You could have the greatest user experience in the world, but if it's not loading fast and your website's not loading fast, then your users aren't going to see the message that you're trying to deliver to them. Designers, I see you. I see you. Let's chat. Disclaimer, always A/B test. There's a ton of great tools out there. My favorites are AdWords. Setting up an AdWords draft and experiment. You can take 2 versions of your top landing pages and do a 50-50 split in your traffic. And you can set up a draft and experiment in probably 15 minutes. Super easy. And it's a really powerful tool. But I highly recommend A/B testing. The other one is Google Analytics and Firebase if you're using native apps. So those are kind of my 3 bread and butter. There's also a ton of other really, really good ones out there. You could also use this guy. This guy, it's called theusersdrunk.com. And basically your website should be so simple that a drunk person could use it. And I'm not encouraging you guys to use this, but this is how important UX is. You can test it and he'll do it. So it's a pretty funny experience. Yeah, this guy needs to get some better hobbies. Cool, but this is why this is important for designers. So if we think about the mobile experience, people don't care that you're coming from a native app to your mobile site. They don't care. People are in your Ubers, you're in your Amazons, you're in your Twitters, you're in your Instagram, and you're switching back and forth between these products to your M site, so they don't care that it's slow, because they're comparing it to these companies that already have been optimized for mobile. So I think that's really important. And they're also comparing you guys to competitors. So giving them that, over-the-top experience the first time they come to your site, that's when you guys are really gonna be able to stand out in the crowd. Especially for the fintech companies in here, it's a very competitive space, and I've talked to a lot of fintech companies, and the performance is fairly poor. I highly recommend focusing on performance. I think it's a great way to get more users and more organic traffic over time. So Google has 25 design principles. These are pretty good. We've evolved a little bit past this, and I'll kind of get into my favorite recommendations. And again, I'll show you the link at the end where you guys can get these, but I highly recommend you go through these checkboxes and audit your own site. It's a really, really powerful exercise. So the 5 major buckets are homepage and site navigation. So you want to keep it simple, short. You guys know, right? You don't want to be overwhelming your users. Site search. So for the e-com companies in here, I highly recommend search. Users that use search are more likely to check out because you're connecting them directly to what they're looking for. So that's if you don't have a ton of products or services, you do not need search. So again, this is for more of e-commerce company focus. Ability to convert, things you want to look for. Very clear call to action button. I see a lot of your call to action buttons tucked away and they're not very clear. You want to make sure it's above the fold. The user should not have to scroll to go on to the next step to fill out a form or click to call. That should not be the case. Form entry, a lot of people that are going after user acquisition are using forms. And where I would challenge you on forms is less is more. If you 100% don't need that field, consider getting rid of it. Users bounce on forms. This is where we see the abandonment rates go up. And lastly is your usability, like how easy it is to actually navigate. You want to make sure that your images, you don't need to pinch and zoom. A lot of just your basic responsive best practices. So there's a lot of tips I give companies, but I want to give you guys probably my 6 favorite. The 6 that I think have the biggest impact, and the 6 that if you just do these ones, you'll be in a pretty good spot. Because I could give you a laundry list of ones that I've seen rolled out, but these are the ones that I think in your market and in Brazil would probably be, very well received. The first is the importance of your homepage. And these do translate to desktop. So this is a mobile example, but again, these are translating to your desktops. And I know everybody in here has a desktop site. So even if you guys aren't thinking mobile, mobile first, which you should, this is still very relevant. You want a clear call to action. So it doesn't need to be a search like Amazon, but it could be some sort of button like sign up now, download our app. Give the user something explicit, some very clear copyright of what they should be doing. The other thing is you want is a value prop. A value prop is something that gives your users confidence. So value prop for Amazon is free delivery. In e-commerce, free delivery is really, really important. I can't say enough about value props, especially if you're in a competitive marketplace, because this is what gets user trust immediately. If the site looks sketchy or it looks, it doesn't look reliable, your mobile site and your desktop sites are reflections of your brand. I'm not going to trust a finance company that doesn't have a clean mobile site and a clean desktop site, and I don't think you guys would either. I think that's the important piece. And the other piece is you do want visuals. On the mobile web, we want visuals. And as I already mentioned, if you're going to use visuals, make sure you're compressing and being as smart as possible about how you're rendering them. There's a lot of companies in here that have native apps. Who's got native apps in here? A few? Cool. Awesome. So we have some native app users. And the one thing I want you guys to take away from here is that mobile web, native apps, progressive web apps, they're all equally as important, right? Like there's no right or wrong answer. It's understanding what your users want. And we'll get a little bit more into that. But promoting your app within your site is really powerful. Walmart does it in the US. I think this is a really good example. They use a star ranking, number of reviews. They show the operating system. So Android users see Android. iOS users see iOS, and it directly takes them to the store, and they download it directly to their device. They also kind of advertise the price is free. Another thing that I see all the time with startups is banners, chats, motion. Users don't like motion. We've seen tons of tests where users are just so overwhelmed by flashing automatic banners that users are just going to leave. You want to put your users in control. You want your users to be able to click through your images or your products or your services at their own rate. The other thing that happens is a lot of time when you're using carousels, say this carousel, and if you guys aren't familiar with carousels, it's like when the images are rotating at the top of a mobile site or a desktop site. So if you're onto the 4th or 5th or 6th image, those are getting loaded, but the user's not seeing them. So this is going back to the performance conversation that we talked about earlier, and it's dragging down that experience. Call to action buttons, I can't say enough about this. Again, this is an e-commerce company, but this could be for anyone. Floating call to actions have become more and more popular, and I think I don't know how I thought about them initially, but on mobile they're really good because the user's not getting distracted by everything else. In the example here, the user can kind of move on to the next step at multiple different points while they scroll. So they can add to cart when they just see the image. They could add to cart when they see the value prop or the size, or they can do it on the shipping options. Clear call to actions, though, you don't need to be an e-commerce company to do that. So a lot of the the fintech companies in here, same thing, right? Like it's like sign up now. And the thing that again, like I really want to reiterate is A/B test it. Test it out with your users and see what they say. If you see the click-through rate is higher with the fixing the CTA to the bottom of the screen, then roll it out. Run it for 2, 3, 4 weeks and see what your users have to say about it. Progression bars, regardless if you're checking out or you're completing forms, progressions are very, very powerful. I know you guys have been on sites before where you're scrolling and you just don't know when the scroll is ever going to end. So breaking it up into chunks is a much better way to keep your users engaged. So in terms of from a technical perspective, this takes a little bit more time and energy, but I will say that this is a very successful way to do it. And if you think about it, breaking it into 3 steps, put yourself in your user's shoes, right? They already start and they're 33% the way done. They're already 1/3 the way done, and they haven't done anything. Versus a vertical scroll where you have no idea how much longer it's going to take. So giving this visual helps users kind of connect the fact that the process has started, and you know what? You're kind of almost done. So I really do like this one. I think it's super powerful in terms of mobile design. API lookup. So Google Maps has an API that you guys can use that'll basically auto-populate, and it'll reduce 4 or 5 fields down to 1. So if you guys were in Uber and you wanted to go home and you typed in your home address, you would start typing it and it would auto-populate the rest of your address and you guys could select it. Users love that because then it's not street, city, state, zip code, etc. So you guys get it. It's simplifying fields from 5 to 1. The other thing is that if you're not on AdWords, I highly encourage it. If it's not right for AdWords yet, talk to me about it because I could probably talk you into it. And the reason that I'm very confident in AdWords is you can use AdWords Express, which is like a lighter version. And it's a really powerful tool to get new acquisitions. So for startups, this is super, super, super important. There's a lot of ways to track mobile interactions. The two that I highly recommend are the top two. Website conversions using AdWords conversion tracking. So you can really understand how your users are interacting with your site and your mobile site. And the other is cross-device conversion, this is incredibly common more and more, where, well, let's take the use case of, we're going to a concert together. And it's a lot of money, and I'm buying 5 tickets. So I'm navigating on a ticket site, and I book 5 tickets, I add to cart, and I'm like, this is a lot of money. I want to make sure that my friends are actually going to go. So you email that step to your desktop, and then you go home, you talk to your friends on the phone, and then you convert on your desktop. Google has enough signals to tell us that that user was on their mobile device and then went to their desktop device and converted. And this is incredibly powerful because then you can make sure that you're investing your money in the right spots. There's some other really good ones in here. App installs for the users the companies that are using app installs, as well as click-to-call, call tracking. So if you guys are sales teams and trying to get leads, there's also an option to set that up. This is kind of the takeaway for UX. Businesses with better mobile sites have 100% higher conversions. They're making more money. Their valuations are more, and they're getting that next round of funding. So I think this is really important for you guys. So I did want to spend there's been a lot of interest around this for good reason. I want to talk about the future, right? And I'm going to talk about the journey too, where a lot of us are going to be on different steps in this process, but I'll kind of give you what I think you should be focusing on depending on how young or how old your company is. Or maybe your company is still an idea, but maybe that idea, if you use some of these best practices, you're going to save a lot of money and resources by investing it in the right places. So let's talk about the future. And there's 2 really, really powerful solutions that the internet and Google is offering. And the reason I say the internet is AMP is an open web solution where it is not a Google product. It is totally maintained by the internet community. Progressive web apps is primarily pushed by Google and other browsers. We were the forefront with Chrome in using it, but the 2 major differences, AMP is for speed. I like to think of AMP for landing pages as probably the best use case for everyone in this room. Progressive web apps is a more rich experience. I'll get into that, but let's focus first on AMP. So from now on, I'm going to keep saying the word AMP, and that's referring to accelerated mobile pages. And the thing that's really, really important about AMP is it's just another responsive mobile page with a few rules. So as I mentioned, open source. I can't say enough about the value of open source. The Stack Overflow and the GitHub communities are incredibly active. And if you guys have bugs or issues and you file it there, the community helps you. There's now a Slack community where you guys can join Slack and get more assistance. The reason I'm kind of highlighting the open web piece is because the open web was mad when everyone started going to mobile. They're like, why is this so brutal? I want the same experience when I'm on desktop, when I'm on Wi-Fi, when I'm on 4G, and it's just not translating. So AMP is a great solution to fix that. And AMP, at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of web best practices. A lot of those technical things that I was talking about earlier, it's just enforcing those. So how do you actually build an AMP page? If you're interested in AMP, I have the link on a couple slides, but the ampproject.org has everything you need to know. The first AMP summit was in New York, which I was very fortunate to be able to attend. And the energy from people around the world and excitement about this product, especially in emerging markets, was really refreshing. So what actually makes up an AMP page? It's just a normal responsive mobile site, but it uses AMP HTML, which is basically just a slight tweak in your HTML syntax. The other is it uses a AMP JS library, so you can't use any custom, third-party JavaScript files. You're probably like, that's going to be really tough, but we'll talk about why that's important. The other piece is, AMP cache, where if a crawler is going through the site, it says like, hey, you've met all the rules and you're following all of our guidelines, we're going to cache a version of that site. So it's a really, everyone knows that caching, you're going to get performance gains right off the bat. So for the non-technical, it's simplified code, it optimizes bandwidth, and it removes all your third-party JavaScript from the critical rendering path. For the developers in the room, the 9 boxes to the right, which I'll very quickly touch on, basically you have to inline your CSS. It puts a restriction at 50 kilobytes on your CSS, so you have to be very thoughtful that your style sheets, you can't use style sheets, you have to have it inline. The other piece, all the JavaScript is async, which is the most effective way to render, a site. Font triggering, must be efficient. You need to prioritize your resource loading. So a lot of the reason I love AMP is basically AMP, when it first renders, it basically knows the size of every asset. So it knows the size of the image, it knows the size of the call to action button, and it basically lays out a map, and then it brings in the content afterwards. So there's many benefits. We already talked about the speed. The other thing is it forces users to have better designs. So on the right, the GIF is actually showing an AMP experience that you guys have probably seen in the past. Users searching for French toast, and they get that pretty much near instant experience. So I can't say enough about the speed element. The other things I love about AMP is it's really easy to test. You can run an A/B test, and use Google Analytics and look at your top 5. Maybe it's just your top landing page. Look at your performance, see how fast it's loading, and then make a version of AMP, which on average developers can build it out in a week from a lot of what I've learned from the hackathons. Companies would build an AMP page in a day, basically, at the hackathons, and then they would have it fully functional by the end of the week. So I just want to make it a little bit easier for it's not an unrealistic expectation. It's a very lightweight solution. And lastly, it's easy to scale. You can kind of run this, if you want to do this across multiple pages, you're following the same template over and over again as you scale. So why is this important? Faster landing pages, more conversions. This just gets back to what we already talked about on performance. So AMP is a solution to fix that. But let's get to why this is so important. So AMP last year came out in early 2016 as a publisher solution. Since it has evolved greatly. AMP is not just a publisher solution. I've been seeing it most commonly used as a solution for their top landing pages to increase conversions. Time magazine saw 13% increase in their time spent on the site. So users are reading more of their content, which is really important for them. Teads saw a 200% increase in their click-through rate. So that's huge, right? Like faster load, more users are interacting with the site, more business. So this is where you guys would want to get started. ampproject.org and AMP Start. I love AMP Start. It's the best, in my opinion, tool, resource that came out of the AMP Summit. The reason I like it is it basically gives you a skeleton. It gives you I'm making this number up, but 80% of the code, and then you're just tweaking it. So it gives you all the the HTML and the inline CSS, and then you can pick and choose which JavaScript functionality you want for your particular landing page. And if you're on a CMS, we got you covered for these 5, and I'm sure this will be rapidly expanding as more and more people and more companies become interested in it. But there's full documentation. Again, ampproject.org. Highly recommend you guys reading it. Join the community. Be a part of it. We'd love to have you. So let's talk about progressive web apps. And this is a conversation that I have a lot. This is a conversation that I hear a ton. And this is a conversation that you guys probably have already thought about or you've experienced at some point. And it's this idea where you need like a site or an app. But I really encourage you to think more holistically. You want to provide the best experience on both. And you want to think about what your users need. Yeah, Ryan, yeah, but that sounds great and all, but let's talk about where people spend their time. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So users spend their time 13% on the mobile web. This was in 2015, so it's slightly higher now, and native app use is slightly lower. So people spend almost 90% of their time in native apps. So you're like, why would we ever invest in a progressive web app? Good question. So we looked at the top 1,000 mobile apps and the top 1,000 mobile web sites, mobile M sites. So you can see that apps, the number of users is low, where the mobile web is open to anybody with an internet connection. So if you think about it, a URL is almost an app store in a way, if you're building a progressive web app. The other is minutes per visitor. Yes, users are spending more time in your native apps versus the mobile web average session is between 1 minute to 2 minutes. Cool, I'm seeing some heads nod, which is great. So let's talk about this and how progressive web apps fit in. So from a capability perspective, you're definitely going to be better off with apps, right? You're going to get that really rich user experience. You can have a customized, welcome Ryan, welcome back. Let's check out your recent history. You get push notifications, right? Incredible capability, but your reach isn't great. You have to go through the Play Store, you have to go through the iTunes Store. And the other thing is, for reach, the M-Web is the internet. Anybody can get to your desktop, regardless of where they are in the world. So where does progressive web apps fit? It's it's a nice mix of both, right? You're getting that capability, and you're also getting the reach. So let's watch this video. I really like this video. It probably is going to do a way better job than I can ever do of explaining progressive web apps.
The only thing that evolves faster than technology is our expectations. We want everything. Better, easier, now. Suddenly, downloading an app feels like it takes forever. And in many parts of the world, data is still at a premium, with 1 megabyte costing up to 5% of a monthly wage. Let's face it though, until now, the alternative to native apps hasn't been great. But that was then. Progressive web apps can now deliver mobile web experiences with a native look and feel, offering features like real-time push notifications, adding a site to your home screen so you can easily jump back to it with a single tap, even when you're offline. Plus the ability to make quick payments on the go. And all from your browser. This is the next generation of the mobile web. So what are we waiting for? Let's go and build something great.
If that doesn't give you the chills, I don't know what will. Honestly, I was getting a little choked up over here. I mean, that was just unbelievable. So what did we just hear there, right? Like, let's kind of wrap this up. We're not going to be able to build a progressive web app in the next 10 minutes of this presentation. But what I can do is, and what I encourage you guys to do, is look at best-in-class examples. Flipkart, e-commerce India company, has probably my favorite progressive web app, and they're doing incredibly well because of how fast it works on India's pretty poor network connection. So what is it doing is it's providing instant loading. It's incredibly fast, as we already kind of hit on. It's responsive, and there's push notifications. So there's an ability for offline mode. The other one is AliExpress. It's another really, really good one. These are probably two of my favorite. And we're seeing more and more of these come out. And what I've been seeing more and more is companies are spinning these, startups are spinning this as a competitive advantage too. So I really kind of would encourage you to at least investigate it. It's not the right fit for every startup in here, but you should be thinking about it. Again, I'm going to skip through this one. And I'm also going to skip through the core functionality because I want to save time for Q&A. But progressive web apps are built on two major features, a web app manifest and a service worker. So for the developers in the room, those are the two buzzwords you're going to want to look up after this presentation. Just me and 100 of my best friends, right? Just hanging out. Awesome. So let's put this all together. Let's get some questions. I want to hear from you guys. I really appreciate the patience. You guys have been amazing. So the startup journey, right? A lot of you guys, I've seen the sites, I've seen the mobile sites, I've seen the native apps. You guys are in good spots. Pretty good, right? I would first prioritize speed. Speed is an easy fix. You can do it very fast. You can spend some time with your development team and get it fixed. The soon is your conversion funnel. Walking through the user from the second that they land on your website to the second they get the product or service or the lead that you guys are trying to get. The third is, AMP, your top landing pages. So wherever the highest frequency of conversions are occurring, consider using AMP. I've seen it work really, really well. The other is, consider building out a progressive web app down the road. Maybe it's not on the roadmap this year, but maybe you guys use this for the next round of funding to get more capital, to show that you guys are ahead of the curve in terms of the mobile web. The other thing I haven't hit on yet is progressive web apps are cheaper, right? You don't have to staff out an entire Android team, and you don't have to staff out an entire iOS team. So it's much easier to maintain one stack versus three. So that's, from a resource perspective, you can see the advantages there. And the last is that I really encourage you guys to keep your ear to the ground on what's new, what's next, right? Tech is crazy. It moves incredibly fast. So, all these crazy new technologies, let's keep your ear to the ground on how they could potentially be integrated with your business. So I put that there as more of just stay hungry and stay competitive. So again, how can I improve a user experience? This is user experience. Here's my top resources for performance. These are really, really good. Yeah, I'm just gonna stand here for a second. There's a lot of smartphones up. I don't know why people are bringing their mobile devices to winning on the mobile web, but favorite ones by far, Chrome DevTools. I don't think you're gonna get anything more powerful than Chrome DevTools. Web page test is my second favorite, webpagetest.org. It's a great way to look at site performance. That's also what gives you the metric of speed index and trying to get your speed index to that 3-second mark on a 3G network. That's a goal that everyone in this room should try to hit. We already talked about SOSA, so it's always good to have data to back it up. And another question I always get is, Ryan, which Chrome extensions do you use? What are easy ways I can get up to date on these technologies? Lighthouse is the real deal. So I highly recommend getting Lighthouse. It basically tells you how ready your website is to become a progressive web app. It's kind of like a checklist. It's pretty cool. Highly recommend it. AMP Validator, telling you that you followed all the steps to be a valid AMP page, and it gives you a green check mark. If you don't get that green check mark, it tells you all of the errors. So then it's basically a to-do list for the developer that day to fix the syntax until it is, the code's, working. Page Analytics by Google. So again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of using data to empower your sites. And Ghostery will see all those third-party tracking pixels that are dragging down your site performance. So just 4 of my favorites. So today we talked about how important mobile is specifically in Brazil. We talked about speed, why speed is so crucial. We talked about design, some of my favorites. And we also talked about the future, how to stay ahead, what's coming. So I just wanted to kind of wrap up with some final thoughts, and then I would love to hear from you guys. So first one, be fast. I think we get that one. Second one, make a great first impression. Get that content above the fold, get your website, everything up as fast as possible, make it clean, have a clean branding so users are more likely to come back. Put your users first. Successful companies understand their users. They know everything that they do. I can't emphasize that enough. Spend time with them, hear them, get feedback from them, survey them, question them, and understand them. The more you can understand this point, if you don't get anything else from my presentation, this is what you want to take away. And if you didn't get anything else from my presentation, I gotta really run this back. And I'll leave you one final quote, which I think speaks volumes about the people in the room. And it's from Larry Page, one of my favorite leaders of all time. And if you're changing the world, you're working on important things. You're excited to get up in the morning. And what I've found the last week and a half is everyone in this room is incredibly passionate about what they do. You guys are so excited about your verticals and your products, and you're talking to your users that it's so refreshing. You're solving problems that are worth being answered. And I can't tell you how important that is, and how awesome that is, and how great it is to be an entrepreneur and have a space to collaborate with other entrepreneurs. So I would love to hear from you guys. Let's take some questions. Thanks so much for the time.